On July 7th, Chinese and Japanese forces clashed south of Peking. The Japanese army seized Nanking and terrorized the population. The actions of the Japanese soldiers would not be fully revealed for 50 years, when the world would learn of more than 100,000 women raped and as many as 300,000 fleeing civilians murdered. Then fighting erupted between Japanese and Soviet troops in northern Manchukuo. The bog of war was engulfing Japan. The United States economy in 1937 spun into the sharpest decline in its history. The New Deal seemed to have failed, and FDR could offer no new policy for Asia. Business simply continued as usual. Over $9 million in arms to China and vast amounts of oil and raw materials to Japan. But Roosevelt could not ignore the rape of Nanking. In a speech in Chicago, he suggested the need to quarantine the patients against the disease of aggression. The League of Nations called for a meeting to discuss the quarantine, but nothing could be agreed upon.
Japanese airmen suddenly attacked, shattering the Panay with a score of hits.
On December 12, 1937, Japanese planes sank the U.S. gunboat Panay on the Yangtze River close to Nanking, where the ship was helping to evacuate foreigners. 3 Americans died, and many were wounded. Some of the victims were machine-gunned in the water. Tokyo moved quickly to deflate the crisis by effusively apologizing for the incident and by paying all of the United States' demand for $2.2 million in reparations. As a result, United States public opinion grew more friendly to Japan and less supportive of China, which was embroiled in a civil war between Mao Zedong's communist forces and Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist army. But Roosevelt was not assuaged. He had decided that all-out government spending was the only way to keep the economy together. And a top priority was the Naval Act of 1938 that authorized the spending of $1.1 billion over 10 years to build a Navy second to none. Congress also authorized spending for 3,000 new aircraft. When Japan bombed Canton, Roosevelt increased military aid to China, which would include the volunteer American Air Force known as the Flying Tigers. Roosevelt also asked United States manufacturers not to sell airplanes or parts to Japan. Japanese Prime Minister Konoe declared a new order in East Asia. It was a veil behind which Japan would solve its problems by fully exploiting North China and Manchuria. Roosevelt immediately shifted more of the United States fleet to the Pacific. He also asked for further reductions in U.S. commerce with Japan. The Morgan Bank, U.S. Steel, Alcoa, and others broke off pending deals. Japan's aluminum supply was almost completely cut off. From outside the government, William Castle warned that these pinpricks would bring on a Pacific War. Roosevelt's intention was just the opposite. He wanted to make Japan realize how vulnerable it was to United States pressure, and thus back away from their new orders in Asia.